Lindsey Graham had passed away the day before I did my set. And I think I was just also experiencing with the audience what we were all sort of feeling, which is like when you see the Fox News notification, senator passed away, you're like, yeah, of course. And then you actually open the article and it's Lindsey Graham and you're like, what? Like that's completely out of nowhere. And so I think that addressing how the room feels, like it doesn't always have to be an elephant. I think it's only an elephant if you're ignoring it. And so even in the set, I talk about how Mitch, everyone thought he was at death's door. And I'm sure he was talking to the devil. And he was like, just give me a little bit more time. All right. Because I got somebody you'll love. And the next thing we know, Lindsey Graham passed away.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast. And today on the show, I am thrilled to be joined by a comedian who has been dubbed the, quote, funniest guy on the internet. He's also often on TV as an Emmy-nominated rotating host of The Daily Show and in his latest HBO stand-up special, Symphony. Josh Johnson, welcome to Obsessed, the podcast.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and congrats on the multiple Emmy nominations this year for The Daily Show. That's very exciting. I saw you had, a few for writing in the past, but now this is your first time nominated as a host. So how did that feel?
Oh, it was really cool. I was just super thankful to be part of the rotating team. Like it's a really good time, and yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is wild to me. So.
We just had Jordan Klepper, your colleague, on this show a couple weeks ago, and I kind of started by having him share some quick takes on news stories that are happening. There's many things that have developed in just the couple of weeks since Daily Show went on summer break. So I thought maybe I could run through a few of them and just, sort of first thing that comes to mind, because I know this is something that you do, in your stand-up that you're putting out very regularly, reacting to things happening. So the first one is sort of the big story of the moment. I don't know if you saw this about Trump hiding on a catering cart to escape a possible attack from Iran. What was your initial reaction on that one?
I feel like of all the places to escape, I think a catering cart is where he'd probably be the most comfortable.
Just because there's snacks, or
yeah, you got snacks in there. He probably forgot that there was even a threat.
Yeah, he's like, this is nice. Maybe I should do this every time. The other one that I know, this is something that you covered the sort of initial part of on The Daily Show, but there's been some big developments, is the whole reflecting pool saga. And I loved your piece that you did on that. But now the Trump prosecutors, Jeanine Pirro, has been forced to admit that no, nobody vandalized the pool. It was just, faulty contracting, which is basically what you nailed that in your piece. But were you surprised that they had to actually come out and admit that?
Yeah, I think so, because the last I had seen personally of it, she had they dropped the charges on the former Olympian that they said vandalized it, but they still said someone vandalized it. And so I didn't think they'd ever just come clean and be like, yeah, it's a bad job.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising, and then his reaction was less surprising, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been following the saga of Sophie Cunningham in the WNBA, who has been dubbed MAGA Barbie, but she's been booed at some games and has gotten into some conflicts with people. That feels like one that could have made it on The Daily Show if you guys were on right now. Have you been following that one at all?
A little bit. I just feel like the real issue there is that if you're going to comment on things outside the game, then you're going to catch heat for things that are outside the game. Like, she's not being booed because of how she's playing. And she's not necessarily being booed because she is like the only one with these opinions. She's the only one voicing them. So then, the way I look at it, even when I saw her make her initial comments, I was like, what are you doing? I don't know. I like, never mind the fact that I deeply disagree with her on everything that I've seen her say. I just look at it as, okay, but it can't all be about the game when the backlash comes, and there are plenty of ball players that we don't know any of their opinions until they retire. Like, there have been plenty of people that have come out and said all manner of stuff, and then now they're not playing anymore. so they don't need to worry about having to perform in front of people that they may have spoken out against like that same week. And so I just feel like it's yeah, it's a little bit annoying to me to watch somebody be um, like hopping on and willing to talk about anything and everything when the mic is in their face. But then when the sort of real world consequence comes from it, they're like, guys, can't we all just get along? It's like you weren't fully getting along when you were making all your comments. So it's a weird thing to ask for now.
Yeah. Have you been tracking Trump's evolving hairdos over the past week or so? He's had some new looks.
Yeah, I just assumed the thing was like a Hasbro toy from the first time I saw it, so I don't really pay attention to what he does with it at all.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's not like it was looking great before and now it's looking bad. I feel like people maybe but it when it looks different, people get crazy about it.
Yeah, I mean, he is bald. Like, I don't know why we even call it his hair. That is it's a bald man, Like, he's doing what's the game? Do you remember the game that, you could put hair and a beard on the guy with the magnets?
Yeah, the magnet and you draw the yeah, you move the hair around.
It's that, but, like, blonde.
Yeah, well, maybe he should do the, the bald beard look. I mean, that's what I'm going for, and it's maybe that would work better for him.
Yeah, you gotta embrace it.
Finally, this is a question that I asked Jordan as well, but I want to get your take. Mitch McConnell, alive or dead?
I mean, everyone who thinks that he has passed will be right eventually. Uh, I personally think that that man's been gone. Um, I don't see a world where he does like a backhand spring in front of the media. So I think that there's a reason that we haven't seen him. If you're trying to shut people up and someone is not as in bad of a condition as the public says, you just release an audio recorder, like truly anything. The idea that that image that was released was like traced back to AI and stuff is like that feels like confirmation the other way around. So
Hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think the images, if they thought whatever they thought they were going to achieve with those images, may have done the opposite.
yeah, yeah, it's just a mistake.
So, for you, these are stories that you may or may not have covered if you had been on the Daily Show the last couple of weeks. I think now it's been just a little over a year since you became one of the rotating hosts. What was sort of the biggest challenge of that for you after, being a writer on the show and then being a correspondent on the show, and now you're one of the, people who comes on Tuesday to Thursday and really has to lead the whole thing.
I think maybe the biggest challenge was probably the sort of the shift in mindset around where my ideas were going to go. So when you're writing and you're pitching all day, there are things that you don't always get to see the full picture. So there are things that get cut for time. There's things that get cut because it might be too prop heavy of a joke, or there's all these different reasons. And when you are like one of the rotating hosts, you just see everything as it comes together that day in real time. So then it has made me, in my opinion, a better writer for myself because now I know what's possible in a day. And so I'm already thinking about, okay, if my big idea is this thing that I know is going to be hard to do, here's my sort of like solutions based approach to how I think we can do it, as opposed to just being like, well, it's funny. Maybe we could just make it happen because it's funny, and maybe everybody could just stay late or something. Whatever the thing is, it's like I feel like my expectations of where a joke can go and how we can pull it off are much more realistic to where we are in the day, especially when I'm thinking of extra bits. I'm like, okay, if people are already working on this is how long this extra thing will take and everything. And so I think that being a little bit more tuned in to what everybody is doing has been a huge help for me for understanding how the show is put together. Because even when I was a writer, there was no time where I couldn't explore those things. Like I did often whenever I was writing, and I would ask questions in props and in costumes, like, "Oh wow, how long did that take to make?" Or "How long have you been working on this thing?" Or and also when you are writing, you are fully aware of everything you have to do, but there's so many other things going on as far as what other writers are writing on. Whereas when you're one of the rotating hosts, you sort of see the bigger picture of that schedule of not only what the day looks like, but what the week looks like. And so you're keeping a lot more in your head.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you say recently that when you were um, interviewing for the show, when you auditioned and then you had to go in for an interview, you did not think you were going to be hired after the interview. But you didn't really elaborate. So I'm curious, what happened during that interview that made you feel like it wasn't going to work?
Well, it just I was having a great time, and I was chatting with everybody, and like we were all laughing and everything. But just there was this thing where sometimes you can lull yourself into like this false sense of sureness where you're like, "Oh, they were laughing in there, and we had a great rapport. Oh, I'm definitely gonna get the call." And so I had started to go the other way in some of my auditions and some of my interviews where I'm like, just because people are nice and they're having a good time with you doesn't mean you automatically got it. So then I kind of left thinking like, all right, like to me, both things would have made sense. Like, there's plenty of talented writers. There's so many talented people in entertainment, and I didn't know who else was interviewing and everything. So I try to keep a mindset of like I would be so grateful, like I'd be like infinitely grateful, but at the same time, I think I'd be uh like accepting of a different outcome. So it wasn't as if something like wildly bad happened. It was more just like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I think that the door's definitely open. That's a possibility." But as far as being sure, I was not.
Was Trevor Noah still hosting at that point? Because I know you spent some time opening for him. I don't know if that was after getting to know him at the Daily Show.
Yeah, so I was hired while Trevor was there, and yeah, I started opening for him, um, maybe a year and change after I started writing at the show, and so that was its own, like, incredible experience.
Yeah, I think he's been pretty open about the fact that one of the reasons why he left, or perhaps the main reason why he left, is to have more freedom to do things like tour stand up and work on other things. Um, I'm curious if you talked to him at all about that because it seems like you found a really unique, interesting, great balance between being on the show and doing stand up in your own unique way. So was that something that you talked to him about, or how did you kind of figure out that balance for yourself?
Well, I think it's very important to remember it's a huge difference between what he did and what I'm doing. Like, he hosted full stop 7 years. I get to be part of a rotating, set of hosts, and so I actually get what I would think is, like, such a learning curve on not only have I been watching the show for years, working at the show for years, but I get to host. Then I get to watch Desi, Costa, Ronnie, I get to watch Jordan host. And so I get to not only get my practice in, but then I get to learn from everybody else. And so yeah, I'm doing stand up on the weekends, but it is in no way near the level of work that he was doing, you know? So I find that the schedule is very, and I'm very thankful for this. The schedule is incredibly manageable. Everybody at the show has been super supportive. Like even when I did the Beacon, I had a bunch of people come from the show just to support and see. Some of them had never seen me do stand up, so just to see what it was like and everything. Even with Symphony, when it was premiering and we had the little screening in New York. A bunch of people came after the show taped, even if they ended up missing the screening because they were finishing the edit on the show, they still came to the after party just to say congratulations and everything. So we have a really like tight knit group of people that I'm very thankful I have their support because I think that it has shortened the amount of runway that I needed to learn how to host in a way that I don't even think is comparable to anyone because I think that I've been the beneficiary of so much support, because if you look at when I became a rotating host versus when the rotating hosting started, a lot of a lot of the other hosts were learning together and they were part of that rotation. I came much later, and so I got the benefit of all their knowledge and like Trevor's advice, John's advice, and a whole crew, like a whole staff that had already adjusted to rotating hosts, writers who had adjusted to it. Like I had even been a part of that writing team as we were adjusting to it and everything. And so, not trying to sell myself short or anything, but just I've had an immense amount of support that I don't really know if we would have the same quality of shows on my part without. Like even just being able to swing by Jordan's office and be like, "Hey, so these are the things I'm thinking for next week." And who knows, because you try to plan sometimes a little bit of your week, and then you might have one big idea that is so a part of the news that it won't go away, but you can't guess if there's going to be a bigger news story that day. And so to be able to just swing by like Jordan's office or talk to Desi about like, I'm thinking about doing these things this week. In your experience, has that lasted? Like the thing that you've imagined talking about, does that actually end up the thing that you talk about ever? And sometimes it does.
Yeah, I was wondering if they would say, no, don't bother doing the work. Just wait, wait until Monday.
Nah, sometimes it really does work out. Like I had a real um yeah, I had a real obsession with doing a piece where, and we ended up doing it. I think it was on the Thursday. So it ended up working out to where we still got to do it that week. But I had this idea about how you could, as a take, say that Trump has actually kept all of his campaign promises. He just kept them to himself. So it's like he promised more jobs. He's got way more jobs. He like works at the Kennedy Center now. He's like at his own head of board of peace and stuff, like jobs he's made up. He promised that we'd all be richer, and he's definitely richer. He's billions richer since he took office. So that was like an overall take that I had.
Yeah, big picture thing. Yeah.
Exactly, and there's so many stories to support the premise, but who knows what the news of the day will do. So,
Yeah. But at least that's one you can have in your back pocket that kind of works anytime because yeah, and if it gets kicked out by the news, you could probably go back to it another time. Um, it's funny you said, you're doing the show and then you're doing stand up on the weekends, which I feel like is a massive understatement considering what you've been doing. For people who may or may not know, but your fans certainly know that you are basically posting new hour-long sets of stand up on YouTube every week, which is unheard of compared to comics who are doing, a special a year. Maybe you view them as different from the kind of special that you put on HBO, but what is the secret to being able to do that? Because I think it's kind of unimaginable for, fans of comedy, but even a lot of comedians.
I mean, just don't do anything else. That's that's pretty much it. I will say, my biggest thing with it is that I wanted to get better, and the best way to me to get better was to obviously get on stage more, to write more, and then I think you change your relationship with your work and how precious you are about every joke and take and peace with releasing it. Like releasing is the practice of just like letting it go, and it'll just sort of be whatever it is to people. And so I'm very thankful for how people have responded. But to me, it's like how best to keep up a daily writing practice, how best to keep up a sort of sharpness on stage, and how best to become a more fluid writer. And it's just by like continually doing as often as you can, because I think that most people take for granted the sort of well of ideas that they're full of. I think that now, especially in this age of like real slash fake generative AI that we're in, where people are questioning where their creativity goes from here, I think it's more important than ever to dive into your own creativity as much as you possibly can, and share as much as you possibly can, because I think that it then becomes, if it wasn't before, it certainly is now, the sort of hope for people who are even questioning their ideas. I want everyone that I come across, especially creatives that are just starting out, to be like very bold in their creations, like very unapologetic and earnest in all their effort, because I think that not only is art better for it, but people are better for it. And so if me releasing every week is like some in any way, even a touch inspiring to someone who makes music, then I hope that they go and they make music, and then they release that music, and then they remix it, and then they even, have another take on it. I think that we have a very rigid space in our minds for what it means to share work. And I think that that rigid space comes from what's been happening for over a decade now, where every individual has become a personal brand, and every interest and hobby has become like some sort of commodity that you're supposed to turn around for money and everything. And when you get into those structures, now you have to think about how you market yourself as opposed to just being yourself. Now you have to think about your work as in a rollout as opposed to just organically sharing, because everything is measured and everything works by metric. And so instead of sharing in a way that used to just be people being like, "Oh, that's really cool. I like that." And then you like it, which is why you're doing it. Now everything is measured in consequence of likes and engagement and overall impressions and stuff. And I think that one of the ways to get away from that is the same as how people handled their signature. So signatures used to be really, really valuable, like incredibly valuable. And there were even people who were very careful about what they signed, because they didn't want somebody turning around and making hundreds, if not thousands of dollars off of something that they signed as a favor. And then I don't know, like, I feel like the internet credits Matt Damon with this. So I don't know if it was actually Matt Damon or if it was just a new wave of thinking. But basically, there were celebrities that started to be like, you know what? I'm actually going to sign everything. One, because these people waited in line or they waited outside the venue and they just want some sort of token as a memory that they were here. I can do that for people. And then two, rather than worrying about who's faking my signature and who's selling what for whatever, if I just give it away, I don't have to worry about that stuff. And so I think that when you stack up what I'm doing, I don't think that there's a versus what other people are doing. I think that I would hope at least that everyone is creating in the way that's the most honest to them. But I do feel like if I want to have, when I look back on this overall career, just for myself, I can't control what anyone else does. If I want to look back and say with honesty and certainty that I have like the best catalog, then one of the ways to have the best catalog is to put out the best work, and one of the ways to put out the best work is to put out as much quality as you possibly can, and then build on that quality from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously working really well for you. You're getting, I think now 1 million plus views on basically anything that you put out, which is crazy. Um, but I did you have people sort of skeptical either in your on your team, in your life, or other maybe comedians of the older generation? Like, what are you thinking putting out this much stuff, burning this much material, instead of saving it for a special or saving it for the but I mean, you're also doing topical stuff, so there's probably a reason why you can't hold on to this stuff too, right?
Yeah, I think topical or not, there's like a sort of season and time for everything. For Yeah, for everything, for every type of joke, for every I mean, we even see it now. There's certain jokes where even if you just read it, let's say you just read it, right? And they don't even tell you what comedian did it. You might read it and be like, wow, this is like a 90s joke, you know? And that was from a time where the news cycle and culture had such a different pace. Like such a how do I even put this? It had a more solid base of what would be popular for how long, and then when trends shifted, they shifted much slower, right? We live in whatever you want to call it, 36 hour, 6 hour, whatever news cycle. We are constantly hopping to the next thing because now we don't just have the internet. We have social that's also pushing different trending topics per hour, sometimes per 20 minutes. And so I think that there are some things that blossom at a specific time, and to hold those things back for the sake of like, oh, I think that this would be good in the special. I think it only works to a degree. One, I think that you want specific releases to be timeless, right? Like I think I look at what I did with HBO as here's my most like timeless piece that I hope people find 50 years from now and get something out of, because I think that they are um funny stories that comment on life in general, and I think that they will be things that stick with us forever. I think the only contemporary reference I even have in the whole thing are like 2, and one is like a karate movie and one is saying Uber. But everything else, I, as best as I could, to both communicate to the audience I'm talking to, but to communicate to future audiences, doesn't have as much of a you can place where I'm at and when. And so I tried not to date it as best as possible. I think that with the weekly sets that I put out, there is an urgency that I feel to speak to what's happening in the moment, and what's happening in the moment may come full circle. It may come all the way back around.
Does it ever feel scary to put out sort of not fully formed opinions, or you're not totally sure how you feel about something yet, but you're kind of working it out on stage, and then that becomes your, public stance on something?
I think it would feel scary if that's what was happening, but I am very sure of what I'm saying and how I feel about it, or I try not to talk about it. So there's even been people who sometimes DM me and they're like, "Oh, I'll do a set about this thing." And I'll tell them the honest truth of like, "Oh, I don't have any opinions on that." And I'm also not trying to just chase the topic, because then I feel like you get yourself into trouble with, yeah, commenting on something you don't know anything about, or not having a fully fleshed out opinion about it. I try to only speak on things that I am very certain how I feel about it. So that way you can stand behind it a year later, decade later, especially as things change, because you can always say there's no harm in saying, and I don't know why more people, maybe it's ego. I don't know why more people don't feel comfortable doing this, but there's no harm in just saying like, hey, this is how I felt at the time. I didn't have all the information. Knowing what I know now, I might feel differently. Or maybe I feel the same way. Like maybe you hit me up and a decade later and I'll still be like, yeah, I think that Trump is evil. Yeah, I mean, like I don't know what new information is gonna sprout.
That's not going to change, bro.
Yeah, so I think that I do my best to operate with enough integrity around what I'm talking about to only speak on things that, one, I actually care about, and two, that I really feel the way that I feel. And I've been lucky so far in that there hasn't been next day a fully different, piece of news that comes out that completely undoes everything that I talked about. Or I've also, I think the care that I've taken to wait and see how I feel about something has helped me in that I haven't had to look back and be like, oh, I kind of cringe at that set now, knowing what I know now. Because I think a lot of people think that whatever I talk about, um, I've been like chomping at the bit to talk about that day. But sometimes what I'm talking about just happened, like literally just happened, the day before, day of. And then sometimes what I'm talking about, I've been waiting to talk about for 3 weeks. So the set is always like written with intention. And I think sometimes people think that the turnaround means that less care went into it. But sometimes I think people would be surprised by what I worked on for 2 weeks versus what was written in a day.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly impressive, the ones that you are commenting on something that really just happened, to be able to put that much care and thought and, sort of structure into it. What is that process like for you, maybe on something? Can you give an example of something where something happened that day or the day before, and then you're saying, I want to talk about this on stage? How does that work for you?
Okay. A good example was more recent with Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham passed away the day before I did my set, right? And it was like, I think I was just also experiencing with the audience what we were all sort of feeling, which is like when you see the Fox News notification, whatever, senator passed away, you're like, yeah, of course. And then you actually open the article and it's Lindsey Graham, and you're like, what? That like that's completely out of nowhere. And so I think that addressing how the room feels like it doesn't always have to be an elephant. I think it's only an elephant if you're ignoring it. Like really not just like reading the room, but speaking into the room, what the room is overall feeling. And then also, I had all of these things already written about the whole Mitch McConnell thing, which I still ended up doing some of them. But the Lindsay thing as well, it colored even the Mitch stuff that I wrote differently. In that the Mitch stuff was about, you know, outside of ego, what sort of like legacy that you leave behind, because we are all sort of like living in each other's shadows to a degree. Like sometimes when you meet a person, you're meeting like the shadow of their parent that shaped them the most. Sometimes when you are affected by something, let's say policy or something like that, you are caught within like a 15th fold of a ripple effect of how this person who passes legislation thinks because of how they grew up. So then there are people that because they escaped, Russia, they have a specific mindset around how government should work. So then they put that mindset, they run for office and they put that mindset into practice, and then that policy affects you as the person. And so I outside of just the jokes about like is Mitch alive or not, there was some real thought into the sort of ripples we create for each other. And it's easy to see it when it's elected officials. It's much harder to trace it back when it's person to person. But all that stuff still exists. And that was a really interesting place I thought you could take this like, is he alive? Is he not? Then Lindsey Graham passes away. And the overall feeling that I had didn't change. If anything, it was reinforced because Lindsey even had more of a reputation and an outlook of like, here's what I think unapologetically, right? And there's even old footage. It's not that old. It might be 2014. I don't know, but it may even be 2024. I cannot remember, but it's on the more recent side. And Lindsey Graham, I don't know who he's speaking to, but he's speaking to like either CPAC or something like that. And he said he's talking about the war in. No, it had to be recent because I think he was talking about the war in Ukraine, maybe. And he said something along the lines of like, we're killing all the right people and we're lowering your taxes. And it's just that, like that to me, I heard that and I was like, he doesn't even, to him, he doesn't sound insane. He obviously said it. And to the people who clapped afterwards, he didn't sound insane. He was doing their bidding as they saw it. But to me, I'm like, imagine being someone in the midst of war, and to find out that the people that are engaging or allied in this war are people who, regardless of side for a second, are people who are so flippant about the toll that war takes on people, on countries, on families and stuff like that, is like that gets back to the ripple idea. And so even if the ripple idea isn't fully executed in the way that I just said it sort of colors the background of what writing jokes about Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell means to me. And so even in the set, I talk about how Mitch, everyone thought he was at death's door. And I'm sure he was like talking, to the devil. And he was like, just give me a little bit more time. All right. Cause I got somebody you'll love. And the next thing we know, Lindsey Graham passed away. Like, but those are sort of my thoughts going into the set. And so, yes, it's the next day, but I had already been thinking about this thing in a broader aspect, which I thought was very narrow about Mitch. And then when Lindsey passed away, I was like, here's a different type of take that I can express.
It's interesting you said that, you feel you have to have a strong opinion or an opinion about something in order to talk about it on stage in this way. I'm curious if you think, how much you think a comedian's personal politics matter, because they're sort of overtly right-wing comedians now, like, Tony Hinchcliffe, people like that who have actually spoken at Trump rallies. And then there's, somebody like Nate Bargatze, who's gotten some backlash for, attending a Trump event, even though he doesn't make politics part of his set. For you, do you feel like politics is inseparable from being a comedian? And how do you think about that?
No, I don't think it's inseparable. I think that people are choosing to engage in any sort of like political discourse at their own. um yeah, I think it comes at the person's own taste for expressing their opinion on things. Like I look at comedians who don't talk about politics as just as much of comedians as people who always talk about it, because it's the sort of lane that they created. I think that we for too long have looked at comedy as sort of genreless, and we're willing with music to say like that's not R&B, that's bluegrass. And we would laugh at anyone who mixed up the two. But then when it comes to comedy, I think we really want everyone to be on the same sort of wavelength and fall into the same places as everyone else. There are some people who are politically engaged because of the urgency they feel around what's going on with their community. And then there are people who are less so. They're like, "Hey, I do one-liners. So am I supposed to do political one-liners all the time?" It's like I I have this style. I like doing comedy in this way, or I'm doing a character, like the some people choose to not be even themselves on stage. Like I think that because of Carlin and Pryor, we've come to expect comedians to be like autobiographical and deeply like honest and stoic in all of their takes and stuff. And some people are up there to be silly. At the end of the day, our job is to make everyone laugh. And and so I think that when you're putting comedy first, you're gonna find um your most true identity on stage. And for some people, that's to be politically engaged because politics is so infused into their everyday life because of what they're up against. And then for some people, they're like, not saying everyone who chooses not to talk about politics is having a great time, but just I think there's plenty of people that are like, my life is fine, and so I wanna do these penis jokes. That this is what I think is the funniest, and this is what my audience thinks is the funniest. And then you find people who get um sometimes thrust into it a bit, and then they wade out of it or whatever. But I think that people are um engaging with it as much as they have, like, an appetite for it. I don't know if it's every comedian's responsibility to come out with a specific political take anymore, that I think it's every comedian's responsibility to do every type of comedy. Not every comedian does crowd work, not every comedian does one-liners, not every comedian tells stories, so we're all different, and I think that, comedy ends up being better for it, because then the people who are looking for a specific thing can find their people easier, as opposed to everyone faking it, like I would rather people who want comedy that's politically engaged to find the people that are earnestly engaging in it than everyone feeling like they just got to do a little bit of it just to get by.
So before we go, I want to run through a couple of these questions I'd like to end with. Um, you know, After everything you've learned doing stand up, doing the Daily Show, is there something you would go back and tell yourself when you were just starting out in comedy that you wish you would know?
Yeah, I think it's actually funny enough. It's something that Trevor also told me. Um, so I wouldn't even have to go back in time and tell myself. I would just go back in time and be like, yeah, listen to that. But it was to like literally enjoy every stage um of career. Like enjoy all the things. Don't take anything for granted, not just as in things will get even better one day. So stay grateful, but like really enjoy the aspects um of career that no one can tell you about until later. So for instance, when you are just starting out, Yeah, it sucks to sometimes go last at an open mic or that no one's paying attention, stuff like that. But when you first start out, you are actually like your most free, which is which is probably for the best because you're at your most unknown and you're most like green, like you're still learning. But you're learning at the same time as no one really cares what you do. But no one really caring what you do gives you a freedom that you have to remind yourself you have. You never technically lose this freedom. Like, I still get up on stage and I'm like, "Look, this is what I wanna talk about. It could go great, and it could go poorly. It'll be what it'll be." But I've had many friends find themselves, uh, feeling crushed under the pressure of, "Well, now people know who I am, and they really expect me to just destroy." So, like, now and in those instances, I've been like, "Well, first of all, you gotta you gotta recognize that they expect you to do really well because you do really well. They're not expecting a new thing from you. Like as stand-ups, we aren't expected to do backflips. So then it's not as if they're gonna come to expect something from you that you haven't delivered before. And that's also another part of enjoying every moment and being intentional is that don't set them up to expect something from you that you don't want to do, you know? Because I've had friends who get really popular through a character online, but then they just want to do their regular stand up when they do the show. And so then people who bought the tickets because they thought they were going to see the character are then disappointed or annoyed or angry or whatever, or maybe walk out or something. And in those instances, I'm like, okay, but let's try to meet those people where they are. They got to know you as this character. So maybe wean them off the character by either sharing more of your stand up or making the character 5 minutes of your show. Just give them 5 minutes. So then that's the thing that they came for. And now you get to introduce the other thing that you do. But there's a way to like move forward with everything. And so there doesn't have to be this battle for all the stages in your career, right? Like you have to look at the people that are there for you as there for you. They're coming and they're on your side, right? And so every stage is so important. So starting out, no one knowing who you are is like a superpower. You can be bad, you could be finding your voice and there's no pressure around it. Then as you find yourself, you start to find your footing. Even that has its own like pros and cons because now you're finding your footing. So now you're cutting yourself off from a bunch of things that you wouldn't want to do anyway, but they will come at the cost of what you see other people get who are big on doing those other things, right? And then you get to a place where you're established. Now being established is great because it comes with the benefit of it's not as hard to get on stage. People will invite you to do shows, stuff like that. But yes, now you have to maintain a level of not just like professionalism, but a level of quality. And so there is an expectation that comes with that. And that's not bad. It just means that you now have a reputation for being quality. But you need to enjoy every aspect. And it's like if you spend all your time pining for the next thing, you miss something, then you're here and you wish you were back over here and stuff. So
When you think about sort of this big fan base that you've amassed and community, is there a surprising person that you found out was a fan or were surprised to find out that this person was a follower or a fan of you?
I'm still getting used to like this is gonna sound silly, but I am still getting used to the fact that people watch. I like when I meet people and they're like, "Oh, I love what you do." I'm like, "You've been watching? That's crazy." So I think yeah, definitely Michelle Obama was like one where I was like, "Wait, really?"
I watched that interview that you did on her podcast, and she is laughing so hard at everything that you say. It's amazing.
No, so very thankful. And then yeah, so many people like this isn't me bragging. I'm genuinely like so many people that I'm really thankful enjoy the work that I do. So like whether it's like Sharon Stone or different like musicians that I've even if they didn't even if I don't see them following on social, I've like met them and they've been like, "Oh, I really like what you do." And that's all that stuff is crazy. So, yeah.
Related to that, our final question is, they say that you should never meet your heroes, and I'm wondering if you have a story that either proves that saying right or wrong.
I don't. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. They should add more to the saying. You know, like never meet your heroes if you deified them. Like that feels more appropriate and fair. I've met plenty of people that I've really looked up to, but because I was willing to accept that, like, oh, this is just a person, I was never disappointed in, like, in meeting them, like, oh man, they were impatient, or they were whatever, right? And some of that is that I've just had really good experiences. And then some of it is that even if that was the case, even if that did happen, I'd be like, alright, maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe he's going through something. I don't know. Because I think that sometimes when we have pictured someone, especially someone we know through media, we don't look at them as a person. We look at them as, like, the idea that we've set up for them. And so what we end up doing in that moment is that, let's say you are meeting uh Matt Damon, right? But you're meeting Matt Damon right after he got a phone call that a family member's sick. And so he's not the most he's not the most, like, in your face, happy, yeah, let's take a picture. Oh, thanks so much for coming to see the Odyssey, whatever. He might be like, oh yeah, nice to meet you. And he's concerned, and, like, there's other stuff going on in his head. And so I have not had that a bad interaction. I got to, even from the first time, honestly, that I met John, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I was kind of doing that thing.
Yeah, Jon Stewart's big deal.
Yeah, yeah, but I was also in a situation where he was in his element because he was at the show, like, I think the first time I ever met him was super brief, and it was him, um, just out with some family, and I happened to run into him, and he was like, "Great to meet you," like, perfectly chilled.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Josh, thank you so much for doing this. You can check out Josh Johnson's stand-up on his YouTube channel at Josh Johnson Comedy, and his HBO special Symphony is streaming now as well. And The Daily Show is set to return from its summer break on Tuesday, September 8th. Josh Johnson, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right, huge thanks again to Josh Johnson for taking the time to talk with us on this episode. He is so prolific, so if you have not had a chance to check out his comedy on YouTube, please do. You will not be disappointed. And while you're on YouTube, please make sure you are subscribed to the Obsessed channel, where you can see videos of all of our episodes. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show, and please follow us on Apple and Spotify as well if you want to listen. Thank you so much to our producer, Rachel Passer, and we'll be back with an all-new episode of Obsessed the Podcast very soon.